Hi, I suppose this is unusual for me, but I just wanted to respond to a common fan theory that I've seen going around regarding how White Diamond is going to lack empathy, and that's why she's going to be the main antagonist that Steven just can't reach. I've honestly seen this thrown around so much that I just felt the need to get my opinion out there on this topic. It is my belief that Steven is the one who actually lacks natural empathy, but I do believe he feels intense sympathy. This is important to distinguish early, so I'll use Merriam-Webster, who has written an article on the difference. According to this, the difference in meaning is usually explained with whether you feel or understand what another person feels. I think Steven can often feel what others do, but rarely does he understand what it actually is. Sympathy, etymologically, means feeling the same way. Empathy is a bit harder. It comes from the German Einfühlung. The "in" prefix means in, near, or within, but it's very typically defined, even in German, as understanding how someone feels, whether or not you feel it yourself or can see yourself in their position. It's about understanding them based on what you know of that person and how they probably feel in any given situation. In the episode Freibo, Petey expresses his negative feelings about how his family doesn't seem very close to him and how capitalism is trapping him in. All Steven could really do was just laugh about it and try to distract from the situation by riding on another ride. It's not very dissimilar to Rose when Greg was trying to open up emotionally. They didn't really mean to hurt anyone, but they just don't understand. They get that something is wrong, but they don't know exactly what it is, let alone what they could do about it. Possibly not even that that person's upset at all. More likely, they just personally feel uncomfortable in the situation and assume that's all there is to it. In the episode Keeping It Together, Garnet and Steven run across some cluster experiments for the first time. Garnet was falling apart, and all Steven could do about it was scream about not understanding the situation. He knew in this instant that she was upset, but he couldn't understand why. It should have been fairly obvious from the context, but I think the force of the emotions was too much and too quickly occurring to him for him to process it fully, leaving him scared, sad, and confused, very similar to how Garnet was feeling, but without any ability to actually understand her or why she's feeling that way to begin with. I think if empathy came naturally to Steven, especially as a diamond power, he would have understood Bismuth sooner. Kevin, Navy, really anyone who tricked him emotionally should not have been able to do so if he was able to understand what they're feeling and why, despite their facades. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Steven entirely lacks empathy. I think that Greg teaches him empathy so that Steven is able to talk through how to get there, such as when he was telling Peridot to think of how the corrupted gem feels when she kept trying to poof it. Personally, I like the concept of a protagonist that is compassionate but doesn't have any natural empathy, let alone any ultra empathy powers. I think that it opens up the door because there are a lot of good people who just don't have natural empathy and have to learn artificially how to think through it and learn these things. Empathy being natural is not key for being a good person, and somebody who doesn't have empathy naturally is not inherently worse. A lot of people lack empathy for those they don't understand. Particularly, neurotypical people lack empathy for the mentally ill and autistic people, but I wouldn't consider them to all be evil. I think they just don't understand how we feel and experience our lives and see us only through their own view, their own experiences, and their own feelings. On the Steven Universe podcast, Rebecca Sugar has said that Steven gets all his compassion from Greg. I do disagree with this in a way. Steven gets the compassion from himself, and I don't think Rose lacks it either. She doesn't know what it's like to be a pearl or to be programmed to fulfill every desire or the threats of not living up to that. She doesn't know what humans need or what it's like to be organic. Well, she probably does now, but she didn't when she created the zoo or dated Greg or any other human. She didn't even know fusions existed until Garnet, and immediately upon experiencing it for herself, she realized that she wanted to help Garnet. As soon as she had even a hint of the feeling, she shifted focus to explicitly caring for gems Homeworld wouldn't. She does not lack compassion. But she does have a childish personality, including a childlike non-understanding of other people's experiences, feelings, needs, perspectives, or how to respond appropriately in emotional situations. That doesn't make her evil. She wants to understand. She wants to grow past her childhood and develop a more mature mindset, something that she can't really do as a gem, and something that Steven's been doing this entire series. With the guidance of Greg, the crystal gems, the townies, and his human capacity to grow beyond what Rose was possibly capable of during her run. I don't even disagree with what I think Rebecca Sugar meant. I just believe that she said compassion instead of empathy is a mistake. Or at least it's not the word I would have used in that situation. As a side tangent, the lack of compassion or empathy shown by Steven to Ronaldo or his ex Jane in Restaurant Wars is astounding, borderline out of character. He saw that he personally caused them both emotional harm, for no real reason, and he's done nothing so far to even acknowledge it. Ronaldo spent the whole episode crying in the background, and he emphasized he didn't want to do it for this reason, and Steven ignores him because he's just too focused on his pet project. Now don't get me wrong, I am ethically opposed to monogamy, and I am completely offended every time somebody acts like they're hurt because somebody transgressed the rules of monogamy. But at the same time, I'm still able to realize that people are hurt and be there for them in that moment, even if I'm critical of the larger social construct that puts them in that situation to feel vulnerable for that reason to begin with. Ignoring that would really have been no different than if he had ignored Pearl using Garnet because he decided that they have to find Peridot, which he doesn't do because he's usually capable of seeing that something is wrong and it's hurting people. A lot of the show involves him helping people that need it. Sometimes it's his own fault. Sometimes he just blames himself when it isn't. Sometimes they just need the help. And sometimes he thinks they do, whether or not they actually do. That's why I can't just ignore him ignoring this issue entirely. Even if he did ignore the sardonyx thing, that would actually have more sense. It would make sense for him to not realize how much that would hurt Garnet. But here, he does it for no reason, and it's kind of out of character, and it's also kind of awful. But in a way, it's kind of in character too, because it's still kind of an obliviousness that comes with that kind of hyper-focused, childish mindset where he doesn't really think about other people too much if he's too focused on a certain topic. Not unlike his Together Breakfast persona. Honestly, I would headcanon that he has ADHD if it wasn't for the fact that these instances are almost entirely in Season 1, with a few occasions outside of it. I think it's mostly an immaturity thing that he's been growing past. But you do have more responsibility to your friend that you screwed over with your immaturity and lack of respect for clearly stated boundaries than you do for immature adults in a business competition that you sparked in utter ignorance by unpredictable circumstances by accident. Come on now. Now, as far as White Diamond lacking empathy and thus being evil goes, I doubt she'll truly be evil. The Crooniverse already said that everybody gets redeemed. There's no true villains. Steven gets whatever he wants in the end, basically. But I also just don't really see a Diamond being the main antagonist. Maybe she does like empathy. I would say that she more so likes Sympathy, but she hasn't been seen on screen long enough to tell for sure either way. She does seem emotionally detached, but she also seems to understand how others feel, based solely on her quote in Legs from Here to Homeworld, where she says, "Hello, Starlight, you certainly gave everyone a scare. They're all just so thrilled to see you safe and sound." Which, I mean, she could just be controlling them and determining that for herself, but she could also just know what they feel anyway. Again, it's way too early to tell either way for sure, although I wouldn't put mind control past her at all. While I don't think that she'll be the main antagonist, I do think that she will be one for at least a season or two. And for me personally, for the most damage to be done, a lack of sympathy with a great deal of empathy is more of a threat than any other combination of the two anyway. To have a great deal of empathy but no sympathy means that you would be able to understand how to emotionally manipulate people. You would understand how they feel, but you wouldn't necessarily feel bad for it because you wouldn't relate to their suffering. That, to me, is the bigger indicator of potential damage than somebody just lacking empathy to begin with. If you have any counter opinions, then please feel free to share them with me. I'm not afraid of that. I just wanted to make this video in order to share my own personal feelings on this subject myself.
I always thought I might be bad. Now I'm sure that it's true, 'cause I think you're so good, and I'm nothing